All right, hello. Thank you for joining us today. Uh, I'm Paul Barthel with Changescape Web, and I'm joined today with, Ian was supposed to be here, but he hasn't shown up yet. So I'm joined with Jeff Steck from Tylerica Marketing Systems and also Ken Decker from Changescape Web. And today we joined by Kyle Roof. He was on a previous podcast, and he is extremely well known in the SEO world. And we kind of talked about this topic last time, but a lot has changed. So we're going to be talking about the EEAT and how important it is to Google when it comes to SEO. And we're also going to be touching on AI overviews, which is formerly Search Generative Experience. So welcome, Kyle, and thank you for joining us today. So
Thanks for having me.
I'll start with having you explain what EEAT is, and is it a ranking factor? And if it's not a ranking factor, why is it so important?
Well, the idea, I think, from a kind of a top-down view is, should your site be in the index in the first place? Is your site something that Google wants in their results? And so it's one of those things that might not be a direct factor if you have EAT signals, but it's the type of thing that once Google checks your site or does an EAT or meta update, the idea is that you will be able to keep your rankings that you got. So while just adding some signals to your page or to your site might not push up rank by any measurable amount, it's the type of thing you can keep your rank once you've attained it. So it is, I think, extremely important to keep in mind. It's something important that you want to do, but you don't want to do it just like, oh, I'm going to do this and now I'm going to move up from page 2 to page 1. That's not how it works. It's you're on page 1 and now you want to maintain those rankings, and that's why it's an important thing to keep in mind. While there's the E, an A, and a T, really the biggest thing it comes down to is trust. Does Google trust your site? Last time when they updated the quality rater guidelines, they had this little like diagram with circles in each of the factors, and trust is this giant circle in the middle. And the idea is that if you don't pass the trust test, the other things don't matter at all. So really, it just comes down to, can Google trust your site? And really what that means is, are you a real thing? Are you a real business? Do you have real people behind the site? Are you trying to hide who you are and what you're doing online, or are you transparent about what that is? And if you're transparent and you're a real company, you're a real brand, you have real people, those are the signals that you want to be able to show to establish that you are trustworthy and you should be in the index.
Can you give us an example of a site that isn't trustworthy?
Sure. The classic example is the affiliate site. Google's been very hostile to affiliate sites for 5-6 years. That's no surprise. And one of the main reasons is that, so somebody comes to an affiliate site to buy, and they search for the best vacuum. They come to a page, they see it, they're like, okay, I like it, I'm going to buy this vacuum. And then they click on that and they go somewhere else to make the purchase. They go to Amazon, they go somewhere else, and then they might make that purchase. Well, what happens if there's a problem with that transaction? They got the wrong vacuum. The vacuum they got is defective. The vacuum they got harmed them. Where do they go? Well, most consumers will go back to the site where they were convinced, to make that purchase. And what happens when there's no support or help there? Because these types of sites often try to hide who is behind the site. And so there's no redress for the person that made the purchase. Now, ultimately, they should go back to where they made the purchase, but a lot of people don't put that connection together. I need to go back to Amazon, because where the trust, if you will, was established was on that site. And so those types of sites that try to hide who they are to make an affiliate commission are the ones that are most susceptible to these things, because they don't want anybody to know who they are. They're trying to stay hidden, and that's from just from a general principle standpoint. Google doesn't like that, because Google wants accountability for those situations, so that somebody can get a refund, somebody can get a replacement, somebody can get help if they've been harmed.
Okay, thanks.
So Kyle, I think what I heard you start out talking about sites that are already ranking to maintain their rankings, that trust was maybe the most important factor. Is that correct before I
That, that
continue?
Yeah, that's correct. I don't think adding any signals to improve anything any will push rank up, but it's the idea that once you've obtained that, and there's probably some threshold if it's not a, a a core update where they're going to make a massive sweep. There's probably some traffic threshold. If you have a site that's getting just a handful of clicks a month, there's no reason for them to check. But if you're getting a substantial amount of clicks, substantial amount of traffic, then at some point there's probably a trigger where they're going to come and check and look at your site to see if you pass the kind of their checklist, if you will, for these
So
things.
essentially,
I would al-
Google's. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh, please. Yeah.
Let's say Google's taking basically a harder look at sites that are ranking. Maybe they're ranking and they shouldn't be, essentially. So the trust now becomes that level of scrutiny that they're really going to put on that. I mean, that makes sense. How about I guess we didn't really define EEAT for our listeners that may not be familiar with that, maybe weren't here with you last time, like me. And of course, I play in the world, so I know it, but maybe can we break that down real quick? And is there a comment in there about aspiring sites, people that are trying to build their sites and bring them up? Which is there, one of the letters that's more important than others, or are they all equal?
So EAT, it's a term that comes from the Quality Rater Guidelines. As mentioned on their last update, trust is the main thing. They have the circle diagram, and there's an E, there's an E, and there's an A, and then there's a giant circle in the middle that is the T, that is the trust part. And you have to pass the trust metric before they even really care about the E, or the A. That's where we're at, and trust really comes down to who's responsible for this website and who's responsible for this content, and so those are kind of two things. Basically, are you a real business, and are there real people that have written this content, that are behind this content? And so it's not an eyeball test from a human standpoint. A human might be able to look at a website and be like, oh, this is legit. I can see that, and they can feel that out from what they see. A bot can't see anything. A bot is coming through and crawling to find signals that match up to these particular types of things. And so you need to make it as clear and obvious as possible to a bot who'll be crawling your page that you have these types of signals to say, like, yes, we are a real company. We are responsible for this website. We are responsible for this content. And it's not one particular thing to do. It's probably checking enough of the boxes that fall into this thing. Now, something that I would point out is that if you're a real business, you're registered in your local area, you're paying tax, you're on a registry somewhere. Those people don't have EAT problems. Real companies, real businesses don't have any EAT issues at all, because they're fine with saying who they are. The people that have EAT problems are the people that are trying to not be as transparent, and those are the ones that Google has been going after for years. And so people that have EAT issues, like, they have to go through the checklist and actually, do I have this, and they're trying to check as many boxes as they can. Those are usually the people that are trying to hide who they are in the first place, and those are usually the sites that Google doesn't want there anyway.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So with with how easy it is to generate bad content with AI, just plug in something, let it generate, slap it on a website. A lot of businesses are doing that. That's kind of what EEAT is trying to get at, to me, is just to make sure that, whoever is putting the content on the website, that they have experience, ideally firsthand experience, experiential. It's not the user experience necessarily, although that's important. It's the experience. Then their expertise. Do they know what they're talking about? Do they have the credibility and the trust? Do they have certifications? Do they have signals from other important websites that indicate, yeah, this is legitimate, real content? You don't get that when you just slap something into GPT and put it on your website.
That's absolutely correct. One thing I would note is that Google is not in the value judgment game. You know, what's better? Somebody that has a degree from MIT, or someone that has and they're fresh out of school, or somebody that has 25 years of experience but no degree? What's better? Who knows? Who cares? Google isn't in that game. You know, what they're looking for though is there has a real person written this content. That's really the most important thing. So it's not necessarily, yes, experience and expertise are factors, but they're not going to value judge one or the other. What they're going to do is they're going to try to determine if it exists, and that's kind of the important point. The other thing I'd mention too, though, with AI content, there's nothing AI about it, and that's it, AI. This industry, we enjoy applying labels to things to make it simple, but these labels have actually no meaning, you know, or like the actual meaning doesn't exist. So when you look at AI content, that's from a language model, an LLM, and really what that is, those things are guessing at the right words that should come from the prompt that you gave it, the question that you asked it, for example. And so when you think about it, it's got a corpus, it's got all these words. You've asked it something, and now it's guessing based on what it knows on the words that it should provide. Essentially, this is just a glorified spinner from 2012.
Yeah.
Now, it interacts in a very nice way, you know, and it compliments you, and if that feels great. But at the end of the day, it's just spinning content. And so the reason that Google has heartburn with that is that you're not adding anything to the conversation when you're just providing spun content. Because at the end of the day, that's all that it is. It's duplicate content. You haven't added anything to the web. So that's where it becomes problematic. And those are the systems I think Google uses to find that content, is that it's duplicate, and it hasn't offered anything new, or it hasn't offered any kind of perspective. So you can start as a base with any kind of AI content that you want, and you can still pass any EAT check so long as you edit for that experience, you edit for that expertise, you edit for factualness, you edit for uniqueness, you edit for your brand. If you do that, then you're fine. But and it kind of goes hand in hand with these concepts. But what it comes down to is you can use AI content for sure, but you just then have to add in these things to make it unique, to get it past that duplicate content factor. And the thing that can help you do that are see if you're ticking the boxes on it.
Okay. When did Google add the experience aspect, and also why? Any insight into that?
It was on their last big update, which was that
I think it was
end of
2021 or 2022.
I think 2022 is when it came in, when they added the eat to make it eat. But the thing that's hilarious is when you read the guidelines, they're like, it says something really insightful, like experience is somebody that has experience, and it's like, well, thanks, Google.
Yeah.
Like,
Sounds like it was written by AI.
yeah. Well, appreciate that one. But expertise, kind of how they do break it down is expertise is more like, is actually like a degree or a certification or something like that, and then experience is time, is probably what they come down to. But how you express that in content is extremely difficult. You know, like to identify like this is an adequate level of experience, or this is an adequate level of expertise. I think that's very, very tricky to put into content, and I think it'd be very expensive for them to try to figure it out. But what I think they can do is they can look at, you know, can they verify if this is an author? Are there signals on this site or on this page that make it clear that an actual person wrote this, and they're taking responsibility for what it is? And so I wouldn't worry about, say, getting a PhD or somebody with a master's degree to write about your plumbing. You know, that's not what we're talking about. I think what we're talking about is if you can establish that a person wrote this. You know, and so those are the signals. So you want like an author bio page on your site, and you want to link to that, and you want that within your schema. Schema are the tags that go kind of underneath the content that search engines see, that make connections between things. Do you have links out to a LinkedIn profile? Do you have links out to maybe any appropriate certifications that you might need to have or would be important to have? And keep in mind also too, though, Google probably will not go to that other site. They're not going to go read and be like, oh yeah, this person's certified. But it's just the existence of the link. These things are there. And I think, as I maybe mentioned earlier, it's never doing just one thing. It's not just like, okay, I did this one thing and now I'm good to go. It's ticking as many of those boxes as you can, because again, it's a bot. The bot has to come in and look at these things and try to identify as many positive signals as possible. So the more you can do and the easier that you make it for the bot, the better.
So I come from a background decades ago where, I did a lot of federal contracting. And I kind of, what you just described sounds to me like the first cut that evaluators make when they look at proposals that they're getting, to respond to a request for proposal. And if you don't check the boxes, you're automatically dropped, if not eliminated. And in this case, you're not going to be eliminated per se, but you're certainly running the risk of being dropped because you're not doing the right things. You're not fulfilling the requirements that were specified in the proposal itself.
That's exactly it. The frustrating part of it, though, and also in your example, is that it's not consistent. They might catch 80% of those things, or they might discount 80%, but there's still maybe 20% to get through that probably should have been discounted in the same way and are not. So you always get into like, well, they're doing this, and they're doing just fine. Well, it could be a matter of time. It could be they slipped through. It's not a perfect system at all. And I think your example kind of is a good analogy because of that. Those people are probably going to get discounted, but there are some that are going to slide through because it is not a perfect setup. And so if you can get past the inherent unfairness of Google and all this, but then realize just, we're trying to do as much as we can, or we're trying to tick as many boxes as we can, then that's what you want to focus on.
Okay.
So what are some effective ways for a business to establish expertise in the eyes of Google? Is this part of the people first content that Google seems to like to talk about?
Yeah, it's really just establishing humans would be my opinion, because you could put in like that first person sort of content, and so like, I did this, or we did that, or we think this or that. You could put that in, but I have a hard time believing that that's what they're going to do. Again, just you have to think about it from a cost perspective. Are they really going to go through each document on the web and look for first person narrative to see that somebody actually has that knowledge? That I just have a hard time believing that. What I think they can do is like, they can see like, is there an author link? Is there somebody there? And maybe this person might be in their knowledge graph somewhere. And that's what I think is more likely. Now, does it hurt to use first person narrative to no, not at all. That's probably something that your visitors want to see. So you could definitely add that in. But I honestly think it comes down to, is there a person? Now, one other thing that I would add that could be a very strong signal, and Google talks about this over and over and over again, is UGC, user generated content. This is people asking you questions. What better way to establish that somebody has experience or expertise than somebody asks them a question? You guys are asking me a question now. This validates that I think maybe I know what I'm talking about, or that I've been around. That's instant validation. Whether or not what I'm saying is true. Again, it's not evaluating that this is true or not. It's that I'm here and you've asked a question. So on websites that have the ability to ask questions, that could be a very strong signal. That's something that I would consider adding in to say, like, there's a conversation happening. I've written this piece of content. I'm saying X, Y, or Z, and now these people are asking follow-up questions about it, or they're asking, should I do this or that in this particular situation? And again, it's not that Google's reading that to see those questions, but just that somebody is actually engaging with this content, that there's a community on this site, or there are people engaged with this site, and now they're asking this person who they perceive is an expert and they're asking them their opinion. And so something else that you could do aside from maybe saying that this is a real person is making sure that there's opportunity for dialogue on your site, and that that's also something that Google can read and see that, okay, these are questions and answers that are happening on this particular piece of content on this site in general.
Is that as simple as opening up articles and pages for comments?
Yep, I would just make sure you don't get spammed.
Yeah.
But and I mean, it's completely gameable. I mean, you're more than welcome. I mean, this product has 5 stars according to who? According to my mom. Like, like my mother thinks my services are amazing, and there's I don't think there's any kind of quality control check on who's leaving those comments or those reviews. And then it's also an opportunity to respond with very term-rich responses. That's something you can definitely do. So again, it's not a perfect thing. It's not, and again, it's not one thing is the be all to end all, but that is something I think you can do that would establish that people are having a conversation with what I'm talking about, and it's establishing that I have experience and expertise.
Because you have experience.
Right.
How about social signals? Do you think Google is looking at shares on social media, reposts and things, or is that getting a little too removed for the huge volume it would have to try and figure out?
In the same way that I'm confident that Google is not going to somebody's LinkedIn profile to read it and be like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. I also don't think they're siphoning through your Facebook post to see if there's a certain number of likes, from your site. I'm
thinking more shares. If the content links to it are showing up on social media, they take notice.
I don't think so. They might, if it gets into the link graph, if shares are able to get into the link graph and they're counted as links, because links are votes, and they can discount them accordingly. Not all votes are equal. There's some votes that are more important than others. But if those shares can get into the link graph, then yes. If they cannot, then I would doubt it.
Mm-hmm. Paul, do you have a follow-up, or are we ready to move on? I know we had a...
No, he pretty much already answered that one about trust being probably the most important one.
Yeah.
So let's jump back then to the search quality rater guidelines. I think you mentioned those, at the top of the show. So there's 4 different levels for each, right? Lowest, lacking, high, and very high. Can you speak to those? Maybe break them down, explain kind of what they mean, and how, for our listeners, what they should do with them?
Ignore that entirely is what I would recommend. Because you're getting into the weeds when you're thinking about, okay, do I have this little thing and not that other thing? It's more, again, are you real, and are you presenting that as clearly as possible? And again, keep in mind, it's not a human looking at it and being like, oh, I like this web page, because Google's not looking at the page. Let me give a quick example. I can rank a blank page. I've done it repeatedly, and I did it last month. And people doubt this for some reason, and then I do it again and again and again. And it's to show that Google is not looking at the page. Google is looking at the code. So I'm not doing anything black hat. I'm not doing this to spam Google, because these are nonsense keywords or words that are not, or terms that are not important. But the idea is that, and we have to make crystal clear, is that Google will rank a blank page. So it has nothing to do with the look of it. It has to do with what's inside the code. So getting lost in the weeds on some levels of this, that, or the other is a complete waste of time. 100%. You need to make this just as clear as possible to a bot that is looking at your code. And as soon as you're worried about something in terms of this or that, in terms of, like, again, a value judgment, that's not what you want to be spending your time on. You can do other things that are significantly more important. So the main thing to emphasize is, as you're giving these signals, as you identified, or as anybody has identified, give as many as you can, make them as clear as possible. Don't make it difficult for a bot to see them, because remember, a bot is not going to look at your site and be like, this is a beautiful site. Clearly somebody spent $30,000 on this site. They won't be doing that. They don't care if it's a $5 site from Fiverr. They don't care if it's a $50,000 site from the best web designer in Lincoln, Nebraska. That makes no difference whatsoever. Can they find these signals? Can a bot see that there is a real person behind this company, that this company is transparent, that they're giving their business information, that they've got these links out to things that they should have links out to, and they've got links out to things that their authors are establishing that they're real people. Those are the types of things you need to focus on, not any kind of value judgment to low to high on any of that.
And that's one of the most difficult things to get clients to understand, that a person is not looking at your website. It is a bot that is crawling it and reading the code. And people just don't understand that.
Well, you hear it all the time. When the biggest lie is just write good content, right? And then you've got somebody that will write good content, and then they'll tell you this is actually good content. And then they're saying legitimately, like, I'm an expert in this industry. I've been doing this for 15 years. And then they'll say on page 1 of Google, 3 of these sites aren't even offering the service, or they're not even talking about the thing. But I know and I'm not even on page 5 of Google, right? So they almost take it like a personal attack, like they did something wrong. But it has nothing. Again, it's not a value judgment. Google's not like, oh, this person is actually an expert, and I'm a better person for having read it, and now I'm going to rank their stuff better. Like that's just not any part of the process at all. So you really do have, or I don't know how many times I've heard people, even SEOs will say, this site is garbage, right? And I don't understand why they're outranking me. Their content's whatever, and their site's terrible, and they don't have anything. And I go and look at it, and it's like, it's not the prettiest site of all time. But then when you run like an actual tool on it, and be like, well, their term counts are great, and their link profile looks great, and you can see that this page has been here for 5 years. I don't have any problem with this. And then you bring that up to them, and really what it came down to was, like, they think the site is ugly. They're looking at this, their site is pretty. Their site is prettier, and that's actually what they're doing. Is they're like, well, my site is prettier. It has more functions and features, which I'm sure that it does. But again, a bot does not care that you spent, money on a site when this other company may not have. They're ticking all the boxes. They're satisfying what an algorithm needs to see. And it's not a beauty contest. It's not a popularity contest. It's, did you get the words on there that the bot needs to see? Did you do the things that the bot can find? And that's all that it comes down to.
Yeah, it's so frustrating that so many customers get seduced by these beautiful, slick sales presentations to build these beautiful looking websites. Who cares how they function structurally or semantically? They just want the pretty, and that's not the way to think about this. You're exactly right.
I would say, though, I do see on small businesses where they went to, and I'm not going to throw any platform under the bus, but they went to a platform that somebody has no experience whatsoever, and they do put up a pretty janky site as well. So the solution isn't just build your own site and you're okay.
Right.
I would recommend getting a dev, and I would recommend having somebody that knows what they're doing and can put you on a platform. But
yeah,
that aside, it is not a popularity or beauty contest.
All right, so let's jump into the newish stuff. Not gonna say it's completely new. So Google Search Generative Experience, now they've made some changes to it. Now they're calling it AI overviews. So before we even start talking about it, can you explain what it is?
Nobody knows what it is, so I'll take a guess. But
that's kind of the conclusion I came to, because you cannot find a good explanation of what it is.
So a few years ago, Google introduced featured snippets, and featured snippets is a way to steal content and put it on Google and provide a quick answer. And they put it at the top. And when this happened, all of SEO freaked out, saying that SEO is dead and there's no reason to be here, and Google's stealing from us. The part that is true is Google is stealing content. That's 100% true. But it didn't signal the end of everything, and it took a little bit, but most people realize it's probably a good idea to try to optimize to get into that featured snippet spot. I would say maybe there was like a 5 to 10% haircut on traffic as a whole. But then from that time, I can't even remember what year this was, 5 years ago, 6 years ago. From that time, though, traffic increased. And so while that haircut happened, it was absorbed because traffic increased and then people adjusted and everybody lived. So now we've got something very similar to that is how I see it. It's more like an advanced featured snippets. It's not anything wildly revolutionary. It's Google, again, stealing people's content because that's what they do. And they're putting it in different places because that's what they do. And they're trying to do it in a way so that people can get good answers or quick answers, which is an understandable justification. My guess is going to be is that there'll be a similar haircut. Maybe this time it's more like 15 to 20%, and that could be significant for some businesses, especially if they're the kind of thing that you can give a quick answer and there's no reason to go to the site. The thing that featured snippet killed were all the sites that were trying to like optimize for what time is it in Rome, right? And then they could give you the answer for the time in Rome, and there was no reason to go into the site. Those sites died. What's the weather today? Those sites struggled, but by and large, most sites did just fine. They're not any of those types of sites, so they're completely okay with the featured snippets. I imagine something similar is going to happen. I think there'll be types of sites that will be very affected by that because there's no reason to go to the site once you get the information. But most sites, though, especially if you're a small business or you're a brand or you're selling something, people still need to get into the site to learn more about your services, learn more about your products to complete the sale. And so I don't think those sites will be overly affected by anything that the AI overviews do. So I think it's going to be an advanced featured snippets. I do think there will be a traffic haircut, maybe 20%, but I think that will be absorbed just like featured snippets traffic haircut was absorbed. I think search and traffic will increase, in the next little bit, in spite of the fact that people are niching out and going into other things. At the end of the day, searching TikTok does not provide great answers for what you're looking to do. I know people are trying to do it now, and I know some people are doing it, but ultimately, I think Google will still be the main source for information and for people searching. And what I see more than anything is we kind of figured out what you need to do to get into featured snippets. Once we get a little more experience with what the AI overviews is, we'll figure out what we need to do to get into those. And it's just a second layer of optimization because you probably need to be on page 1 to show up into those things anyway. So you still need that first layer of optimization to get there. And then you need maybe a second layer of optimization to see if you can get into those different areas. And I would anticipate, these things just came out. They're not set in stone. I imagine they're going to change a lot, in the same way that Google always tests things and changes things. This will probably go through a lot of iterations before it gets locked into what it is. So I wouldn't stress too much about it. Make sure your pages have good semantics, and good semantic tags. Your H1 is the first thing on the page, and you got your H2s and H3s that properly formatted. You're getting your NLP and semantic terms on there, which just means you're writing good content that makes sense for what you're talking about. You don't have to go too deep with that. Just write actual sentences would be a good first step. And if you do that, you're gonna be okay. I think you're going to show those things. There are probably some tweaks here and there on what we really need to do, but by and large, I think most people are gonna be just fine. Most sites are gonna be just fine. And whatever cut that comes in traffic will be absorbed in the next couple of years, just in terms of as traffic growth happens.
Yeah, I think some of the early concerns seem to be that we're already seeing ads popping up in the AI overview section, and and it's pushing.
That's deliberate. I think. God, I forget who it was. Somebody. I read an article and it was with the Google I/O conference or whatever it is, and they came flat out and admitted that that's exactly what they're trying to do.
They have to monetize it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
If they don't have ads there, then in a situation where people aren't going to click through, they have to have an ad there in order to maintain their revenue. So of course they're going to be ads.
They're a very profitable company that wants to stay that way.
Yeah.
And they have shareholders to answer to.
Yeah. It's starting to push, the traditional organic results down even further on the page right now. And so I think that's why there's the freak out factor, with a lot of people, is because, okay, great. Now they can't even, you got the AI overviews, you got the ads, you got Google Maps if that's appropriate, you've got, the traditional search ad results or the search ads popping in there before you ever get to the organic. So I think, like you said, it does create a new opportunity. And if you're already doing the right things and you're already on page one, it's just an extra layer of optimization that you're probably going to have to take a look at and and work on.
That's exactly what it is. It's just another optimization factor. That's what it comes down to. It'll be interesting to see. I like to talk to my father and ask him, "Hey, how'd you find that information?" Because he's not an SEO and is not a marketer and has no interest in any of that. Hey, what do you think about? Hey, I was like, hey, what do you think about the new stuff in Google? And he's like, what new stuff? He's, yeah. Like, and he's like, yeah, I did it and I scrolled around and then I found what I was looking for. And so I understand for sure that things are getting pushed down. And again, I think that's where a traffic hole will happen, but people are still getting there. They are. And again, though, if you're on page one or probably page two as well, that gives you the opportunity to get sucked into whatever the cards are to that area. People are clicking. So I don't know. Ask some. I don't want to call them idiots, but like SEO idiots. People that just aren't. Ask them how they're searching. And that should give you some insight as to how people are doing it. And right now, I don't think much has changed. They're still searching and scrolling around and clicking on stuff.
And
from their point of view, the presentation may be a little different, but yeah, they just find results. Click on results,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The only people that complain about Google results are SEOs, and then the other people that complain about it are people that have an axe to grind. I was ranking number one and now I'm not. Those people complain, and then SEOs complain, and then after that, the other 99.98% of the population does not complain.
Yeah, and
they quickly adapt, actually.
Yeah. Because if they're finding the answers they want, they're okay with a slight inconvenience, realizing that I'm going to ask this thing a question. Maybe I don't get it on the first try, but they understand that there's a decent chance they're going to get it on the second or third try, and they're okay with that.
So Google has said recently that the search is moving beyond just the SERPs, and I think we've kind of been dancing around this already. But they're getting into more than just SERPs, getting into photos or moving into the Gmail world, Notebook, LM, and then of course Gemini 1.5 Pro. And there's just an announcement today about that. Can you unpack some of that, the beyond just the search results page and the Google verse and how to show up and what all that means?
I haven't seen whatever that announcement is today, so it's
it was just the latest drop of Gemini.
But if you don't think that Google's been reading your emails like for the last, I don't know where you've been. Like how do you think the ads show up within your Gmail if they're not reading your stuff? So also, like, I always chuckle a little bit about SEOs that are kind of like, I don't use Google Drive because they're gonna find my stuff. I'm like, you think that's stopping them? Like, like that's the thing that's gonna. Now, of course they're reading all that content. Of course, there's absolutely no privacy. You know how safe search works. They have to take, let's say you got safe search on, right? They take the web page, they put it in, they render it, and okay, it's good, and then they give it back, right? So when you log into your bank account on safe search, guess who just got your username and password? Safe search.
Wow.
I mean, and that's been for the last 15 years, kind of thing. Like, you don't think they've got anybody like so my point is, if they're getting into other things and they're gonna start advertising here or there, or search is happening in different, that technology has already existed. That's already there. That's gonna be, honestly, if we can get an opportunity to optimize things, that's even better for us. That's better for businesses, because that's another opportunity to maybe meet your audience where they are in a place that you can kind of make it uncrowded situation where you're not maybe just within SERPs, but maybe you can really get directly to where somebody's at. So I just see these things as opportunity. If somebody thinks that like it's an invasion of privacy or something, like, get a job, man. I don't know where you've been.
I guess, I mean, I think you kind of nailed it. That's the crux of it. People want to find stuff and businesses want to be found. So as we move into this new world of AI and, generative search and, Gemini, of course, is Google's platform. Well, really the question is, what does that mean for search overall and for how businesses get found? So are there any insights or any comments you would have toward that aspect of it in the AI and specifically with Google? The
not at the moment, because we just don't. I don't think we really know, and things are changing a bit and are moving quickly, and I don't think there's been a lock into what something might be or what it might not be. But it's just all opportunity. That's all it's going to come down to, and it's important to understand that Google is a middleman. They are making money off of the concept of I need information and this other person has information. And then they sit in that middle area and make money off of that. They're the ultimate middleman in this exchange. And so in order for them to exist and to thrive, they need both of those things. They need somebody looking for the information and they need somebody providing the information. And so I think they acknowledge that they could go away if either of these parties get upset. Most people think of it from that user perspective, if the users don't like. But the same thing, if people get tired of giving content and they're not getting reimbursed for that content, ultimately that'll go away as well. And so in all of these situations where there might be another venue or another avenue, as long as Google can sit as that middleman to provide that connection between those two parties, then that's what they're going to do. But also what's important to understand is that if they're there, then there's some algorithm involved. And if there's an algorithm involved, then there's optimization to be had. And that's where we step in. The time that we are in trouble is if they somehow employ all of India and China to and a human is making the decision of what information to show. Then we're in trouble. But that won't happen. You can't employ 2 billion people to handle all the searches that are happening in whatever form they might be. So it'll be some form of an algorithm there, and as a result, there will be the opportunity to optimize. And so if what I would just be doing is I'd be keen to look at where these searches are happening or where those connections are, where Google's the middleman between those two parties. And anytime that exists and you can identify that, then you can also identify that there's an algorithm that's making that happening and that that's an opportunity for optimization.
Yeah,
so we've been talking a lot
on my computer, and I got ads for feminine products.
Say, I'm sorry?
Yeah.
I said my girlfriend was using my computer to shop online. I started getting ads for feminine products. It's like, I don't use these.
If I could add a question to our list, we've been talking a lot about Google. Everything's been Google oriented and Gemini and SGE and all very Google centric. But Google's not the only search engine, of course. And what kind of brought that to my attention just this morning is I use Outlook for my email. And I highlighted a phrase in an email I was going to copy and paste it into Google to search. And all of a sudden, Outlook is like, do you want to search for that? And it, of course, then went to the sidebar, but it was, I'm sure, the Bing engine that was doing search. So my question is, we've been talking a lot about Google and the future and how things are changing. Do we need to worry about Bing or other minority share search engines, or do we just worry about Google and all the rest kind of fall out of that because they're following what Google does?
I really hope we do. I really hope we do. But I honestly think it feels like a Simpsons episode where it's like you wanted, McDonald's burger or Burger King burger, and you end up with a Dairy Queen burger, and they're making some joke about it, and nobody wants a Dairy Queen burger. Do you remember those Wendy's ads from back in the day that was like getting Burger B? I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember those, but so I feel like Bing is still Burger B, and I don't know who genuinely wants to eat that.
Yeah,
some
I guess
people do.
my question
I mean,
is, it's what about 15%, right? But as it moves into
I think
the
that
email,
that's way generous. I think Google still has about 102% grip on market share. If like that's got to be Bing propaganda to say that they've got 15% of search. There's no chance. There's no chance they've got that. And maybe cumulatively, because AOL is Bing, DuckDuckGo is Bing, Yahoo is Bing. Anybody that's done a proprietary, I have a search engine, that's Bing. Comcast and Cox and those cable providers, that's all Bing. So
They still
maybe you
exist?
get there. What's that?
They still exist?
I mean, there's still like when you log into your cable, there's still
Yeah.
like a search bar in there, and you know who uses that? People that are 900 years old. Like that,
Exactly.
like that's the only people who would in their right mind would search there. But that's all Bing, and so like there is some form of an audience that is doing those searches and they're getting those Bing results. Did you see that in ChatGPT they used to say powered by Bing, and then they took that away because again people are like, wait a minute, I'm eating burger B, like I don't want these results. So I mean, the perception is still there that it's not great. So my point is there are a lot of opportunities to get to Bing, and in spite of all those opportunities, there's no chance they're at 15%.
yes. So my question though was, do we not even worry about whatever the minority share is? Do we not even worry about that? Say it's not worth worrying about, or do we say it may be, and we need to pay attention to what they're doing as well? And then, do you see things changing as their own AI tools start to maybe try and change that balance of power as they bring it into, like I said, in Outlook, right? And
Yeah.
my
So
reaction was, hell no, I want to use Google, and I copy pasted it the way I always did. But
yeah,
it popped right up there in the bar. So do we need to think about that as SEOs that are helping, getting our clients to appear in search? Do we need to be worrying about those alternatives?
I mean, if you have a product that people that are 55 plus would buy, then I would put an eye on Bing, because again, who's searching in Comcast when they log in? It's the same kind of people that search for Google to get to Google, right? Like, and I honestly think like Google is like the number 5 search in the world, so you can't laugh too hard because there are a lot of morons that are doing that, right? But I think a lot of them are pretty old. But the idea is that there are people doing that search. So if you have a product that would be towards that demographic, then yeah, for sure, I would definitely take a look at it. But that said, Bing has very little external signals for their search results. They're definitely doing some with backlinks, but not much at all. And I doubt they're doing anything with user experience. And I doubt they're doing anything advanced, even on like naughty niches. Things that are problematic, like payday loans. Google is very hyper vigilant on those types of searches, and they definitely have a higher level of scrutiny. You can see that there are different layers of algorithm for casino and stuff like that, or anything else that falls into the YMYL category. Bing doesn't have any of that. Bing is still very highly focused on your on page. So if you do your on page for Google, there's a pretty decent chance you're doing well in Bing. So something I would look at, I would still optimize towards Google, because it's very likely that whatever you did for your on page is great for Bing.
Mm-hmm.
If I could jump in there, the only people that are using Bing are people that buy a computer and don't know how to download
Change
Google.
the default.
Yeah, they use the default. And the other thing, Jeff, is look at the analytics, and I think this is what Kyle was saying, is if you look at your analytics and you have an older demographic, and 60% of the searches for that business are coming from Bing, then you might want to take a look at it. But
Yeah. So I use Bing as the example, of course,
I would buy anybody a steak dinner at the restaurant of their choice if they're getting 60% of their traffic from Bing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they are. I'm just saying if you have a disproportionate amount coming from Bing.
But actually, here's a great thing. Can you identify 15% of your traffic? This would be good. If you service enough sites and you've got some sort of tracker where you could see, or actually Google Analytics I think will show you, are you getting that much traffic from Bing and from the Bing family, you could probably get a good idea. I bet it's 6-7% is what I would guess. But you could probably see that in your analytics.
Yeah, you can, and I wouldn't disagree with that. As just making an example that if you're getting a disproportionate amount for whatever reason,
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying, but,
Yeah.
but you could actually kind of get a decent idea if your traffic is coming through your analytics, because they show the referral from Bing and DuckDuckGo and a few others, so you could, or Comcast.
or Cox.
Yeah, so I use Bing as the example, but of course, iPads, Apple devices come with Opera, right? Or whatever their browser is now. I've got Chrome on my iPad, so. but the question was, we just worry about Google and everything else takes care of itself versus having to spend any energy on the others. That was the
because it falls into place. It falls into place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Kyle, you have a software called Page Optimizer Pro, and I know you've just released what's called, I believe, Next Gen EEAT. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, we're pretty pumped about that, to be honest with you. I think we're using AI for good here. But essentially, this kind of gets into going through the quality rater guidelines. There are 20 points on each of those: the experience, the expertise, the authority, and the trust. There are 20 points on each, so it's an 80-point check. And it kind of gets into answering questions. Did you satisfy that from a bot's perspective? So if there's that additional layer of check that gets into any of these things, so it's not just it's kind of a basic EAT check for, do you have a copyright? Do you have links to socials and stuff like that? That's kind of check number one. Check number two is actually going into this content. So if you have any concerns about that Google is doing these things, or that those terms might come in. But then also from a human standpoint, this actually gets you into content that humans like to read. That actually can establish that this is trustworthy content just from a human standpoint. And so what we've done is the AI goes in and does an 80-point evaluation on your content to see if you can hit all the letters, all the E, the A, and the T from the content that exists. And so it's a lot of fun. We're actually really liking it. I enjoy playing with it. And I don't say that about everything that I've done with the tool. There are things when you build it out, there are things you build out and you're like, nah, that was a good idea on paper, but I don't know. But like this, though, is actually a lot of fun, and we're really enjoying it. And as things get more advanced, this is really kind of another thing is future-proofing your content. That are you getting past, will you get through these checks if and when they happen?
So that's an interesting point. I mean, so if you've got a website that, has been around for 15, 20 years, and you've made an investment in writing blog posts, and you've done a good job of being diligent to write out every service, a page for every service that you do, and you include some content about locations that you're serving and all that kind of stuff. It's probably still incredibly important for you to go back through using, a tool like Page Optimizer Pro to make sure that all of that old content still meets the criteria that have now evolved and changed from when that content was originally written.
Well, two things. One is there is a form of inertia that happens, that sites that have been number one tend to stay number one, and it is harder to knock them off. That does exist.
Okay.
But at the same time, there is also content rot. Where you can watch, this was ranking pretty well, and then it tends to slide down, and you can watch that go. And then there's the idea of the query demands freshness, deserves freshness. And then the idea is that, how new does this content need to be? So while there is that inertia that happens for most sites, you do need to be cognizant of the fact that after a certain amount of time, your rankings will drop for that particular piece of content as it becomes less fresh, as it becomes just older. And that's the rot that you see, and you can see this downward trend. So you should definitely have something in place to check your content to see, is this still fresh? Is this still talking about what it should be talking about? But even more importantly, as competitors come into the SERPs, as there's algorithmic changes, the goalposts shift, and so what was satisfying the algorithm may not be satisfying the algorithm anymore. And
That's right.
as a result, you need to keep an eye on that. And if I can give a very shameless plug, we actually because this was a problem that we had, within the agency, and which, well, where Pop comes from anyway, this was solving our own problem. But we have a system, we call it Watchdog, and the idea is that after you've optimized your page, you can click Watchdog, and it's going to monitor if there's been a change in the SERPs. New competitors have come in, and that can either be from an update or from when you got to page 1. Your competitors were pretty upset about that, and they started doing some more SEO.
Yeah.
And the idea is that it'll alert you to changes on page 1 to the SERPs, and it'll also then let you know, like, hey, you might need to add these terms here, here, and here to keep this content fresh, to keep it within what it needs to be to maintain your rank. And so that's, you don't have to use my tool. It doesn't hurt my feelings if you don't. But you do need a system for that, because you need to monitor those changes. You need to monitor what's happening, because you can't, SEO isn't just a one-time, now we're ranking well, and we can just let it go forever. There will be.
That's right.
There will be changes to the SERPs that you're going after, and you need to keep an eye on those.
All right. Well, Kyle, is there anything else you want to add? We're coming up on an hour here, and if not, how can?
Good. I'm good. I'm ready.
How can our
I didn't get a cup of coffee this morning, so I think you need to get that, or I'm just gonna take a nap real quick.
Well, how can our listeners find out more about you and what you do? I know you talked about the Page Optimizer Pro.
Yeah, so then the website is pageoptimizer.pro. My courses are in img.courses, or anybody can go to kyleroof.com. And somebody updates that site. It's not me. I assume somebody's on it. I saw the SSL certificate die the other day, and I was pretty upset about that. But it should be current. It should be good, and they can find my stuff there. All
right, good. I think this is a good place to wrap up. Kyle, thanks for joining us today and sharing your knowledge on this. And thank you, our audience, for, probably not joining us because it's 9 o'clock at night. But there will be a replay. So I hope you found this valuable, and we will see everyone next week. And Ken, you're going to put this up there tomorrow at the normal time, right?
Yeah, I think I'm going to rebroadcast this at our normal broadcast time.
All right.
So thanks, Kyle.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Kyle.
Take care.
Have a good day.
Good night.